So here we will now be understanding what are data types in Solidity. So now first thing first, let's make a new file. Let's say make a file of data types.sol, right? And let's just copy the first two lines because I already explained you what are these lines meant. So this means essentially we are specifying this license identifier from MIT. Then we have this version of Solidity which we are going to be using 0.8 point decimal to 7 maybe like 8 or 9 or anything. Now if you're familiar with any data types, you will understand. I will try to classify the data types of Solidity in broadly 6 types. So now let's say types of data types in Solidity, right? So now first thing first, first one we have with us is our uint. Then we have our int. Then we're going to be having our string, and then we have our Boolean, and then we have our address, then we have our bytes, right? So this essentially, these are the 6 types in which our data types in Solidity are primarily defined. Now first thing first, let's make a contract. Let's say make a contract of types, right? And let's just start filtering them. So let's say we are going to be using int, and by default uint is specified to uint 256, right? So these are the essentially, so these are taken. So now over here, now this means that this uint, the uint, if we can mean the uint is tend to be an unsigned integer. Let's say unsigned int, right? Which means it can only be a positive integer, right? Means unsigned integer, it's already be a positive integer. Cool. So now this int can be negative, it can be negative, or it can be positive, right? And the string is simply the string which just come inside over here, and the Boolean is essentially your true or slash false. Then we have this address. So address is essentially your void address, which I just show you over here. So let me just enter my password and let you know what are essentially address in Solidity. So it's taking some more of time. Cool. So if you look at this, this is our wallet address. Let's copy this, and then you can essentially paste it over here. And another thing, these address can't be, so a lot of people make mistake, they tend to fill this address in string. So this is, these aren't, they are, let's say they aren't filled with string, right? So a lot of people tend to allocate, a lot of people tend to take them inside a string, which is not possible, right? So these are essentially independent, so we don't need to essentially fill them in a string, right? Cool. So then we have bytes. So bytes are essentially a collection of bits. So if you understand what are bits, so let's say we can add extra information for you for your information. We can say that one byte is essentially equals to 8 bits, right? Now bits are essentially, so if you understand bits are essentially 0 and 1. So 1 byte is essentially a collection of 6 bits, and these are bytes. So now by default bytes are essentially a collection of bits, and which are represented in a dynamic array. So when I say bytes, so we can say a byte can be anything. Let's say we have a name like Ankush, right? We want to convert this into bits, right? So that people, so let the machine able to understand that. That's how the bits are come into the picture, right? So yeah, we have this thing as for now. So let's understand. Let's try to do and yeah. So what we can do now is we can essentially use them in a program. So first thing first, we have specify that uint. Now let's say make it a uint, because unsigned integer means it's a positive integer, and we are going to be adding this as let's say my number. Now this is equals to, let's say, 8, right? Then we have a int. Now this int is equals to my int. Let's say we just specify any other name, and this is the int is equals to -8. We can just specify anything. We are just specifying -4 because we know that the int can be negative or it can be positive. Let's say next thing which we have is a string. Now string is essentially my name. That's like that. Let's say I just put my name, and make sure that you are aware of this semicolon, because if you don't add semicolon, it will give you an error. So that's why it's really important to add semicolon at the end of your, let's say, code, or at the end of a line, or at the end of a certain time of execution. The next thing which we are going to be using is we have this Boolean. So let's say Boolean stands for bool. Let's say is true. Let's put this as true. Let's say false. It's false. Then we have our address. Let's say put that address as owner, and we are specifying our address right over here, and cool. Now next thing which we have is bytes. So bytes are my bytes, and we can just specifying anything. Let's say we are specifying Avengers. Cool. So we have done passing every by using every data types. So we have a uint, we have an int, we have string, we have boolean, we have address, and we have bytes. So we need to add a public over here because we know that we can't able to use this. So let's say I will just show you an error. So let's say errors are also important. Let's say if I don't write public over here, and let's just deploy the contract over here. Let's say deploy, compile. Yeah, so now if you look at this, it's giving an error because I don't write semicolon at the end, right? Let's see now it's check. Cool. Let's say go over here and just deploy this. It's selected up this file, deploy, and you will see we show nothing. So if you look at this, there's nothing over here to call, right? That's why I need to specify that it's a public function or public type. Let's say we are using public over here, and we need to add public for almost every type. Let's say add public over here, public over here, public over here, public over here, and public over here. Cool. So now let's again compile the contract, deploy this. Now the deploy version for this contract, you can delete the previous contract. Now when I deleting this contract from here, it doesn't mean it deleted from the blockchain, right? It just delete from this space. So it's basically stored in the blockchain, right? So it's not permanently deleted from the blockchain. So now again deploy this over here. You will see now you will able to understand these buttons are essentially pop up. So we just click on this is true, it's false because we specified this false. My bytes. Now this bytes are essentially converting this number into these bytes, right? Now we can also add my int. My int is essentially -4 because over here it's -4. Now we have my name. My name is my name. Then we have this my number 8, and then we have our owner, that is our address. So we're specifying right over here. Cool. So now we understand what are data types and Solidity. Now let's in the next video we'll cover upon that how we can essentially use variables in Solidity Yeah, thank you.